Welcome to the movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take good care. Quarantine 2, Terminal is the name of the movie. At an airport in LA, flight attendants Jenny and Paula are becoming geared up for his or her subsequent ride. Captain Forrest and his co-pilot Woolsey chat with them and that they be aware they won't have many passengers tonight because of the thunderstorms. Woolsey additionally takes some medicinal drug due to the fact he isn't feeling properly. Then the attendants meet this night's passengers. George is a teenager who usually flies by his own and doesn't like to be smothered. Bev has come with her husband Dr. Kingston, whose Parkinson's doesn't permit him to transport or communicate. Military medic Sheila is worried approximately flying while Louise is relaxing with her cat. Niall and Susan are waiting for a child and are pretty germophobic, so they clean their seats earlier than sitting, even as Vorst and Nika are excited foreigners who don't communicate very good English. Henry has delivered a cage of hamsters, and while Ralph attempts to help him put it within the garage bin, he gets bitten in the technique. The cage gained match, so the flight attendants force Henry to ship it to the cargo hold. Businessman Preston maintains sneezing, reputedly ill with the equal factor Woolsey has. As the aircraft ultimately takes off, Jenny has to remind Niall to hang up his phone, and while he refuses, Henry forces him to. Each men get indignant and argue, so Jenny sends them again to their seats via reminding they could be arrested after they land in the event that they don't behave. Afterward, Henry flirts with Jenny, telling her approximately his PhD and making a remark about the sorry country of society's manners. Moments later, Henry is watching the news and learns that the Middle for Sickness Control, or CDC, has surrounded a rental constructing in LA. In the meantime, Ralph isn't feeling nicely and asks for water while gazing the wound on his thumb. Jenny notices he's sitting in a peculiar role, and whilst she assessments on him, he unexpectedly pukes all over her. His mouth is foaming as he demands to get off, so the flight attendants strive their exceptional to take care of him. Nobody notices the cat sneaking round and eating some puke off the ground. Jenny leaves the man with Paula and goes to easy all the puke off her frame, but at that moment Ralph runs down the corridor and pushes her down. He begins pounding at the cockpit door, inquiring for the plane to forestall, so Woolsey follows protocol and locks the door whilst Forrest warns floor manager of the state of affairs. Henry tries to prevent Ralph, but he's without problems overpowered, and the equal happens to George. Then Preston, George, Paula, and Sheila team up with Henry to preserve Ralph and in the end knock him out. The usage of plastic restraints, they tie up his wrists. Later on, Sheila examines no person was injured while Jenny freaks out in private, telling Paula how she failed to be useful in an emergency. At that second, Forrest pronounces he's been given orders to land and sends every person to their seats. The aircraft shakes plenty as it goes down, and the attendants train all people to hold their heads down. Ralph's frame continues sliding and bumping his head, so Jenny and Paula must take the time to transport him to a seat. Even as Paul struggles with the seatbelt, Ralph wakes up with purple eyes and bites her nose, significantly injuring her. Then Ralph is going loopy, and another time the passengers must team as much as push him into the restroom, locking him up. As the aircraft sooner or later lands, Sheila makes use of the emergency first aid kit to present Paul a few medication to be able to prevent her from going into surprise, and ties a headscarf around her face. However, she's dropping lots of blood and desires immediately medical attention. Forrest is pissed off because ground control tells them to wait even though they recognize about the emergency, and he decides to interrupt the policies with the aid of choosing an unassigned gate. Happily, Bag's handler Ed sees the plane coming and opens the gate just in time. Forrest and Woolsey keep the plane's toilet door close while anybody else desperately leaves the aircraft except for Bev and Kingston because they need assist shifting. Ed courses the group to the opposite quid of the gate, however the door is locked and nobody solutions his request at the radio. They haven't any desire, however, to comply with Ed via an employee front to enter the staging place of the airport. The institution takes the stairs and Ed reaches the alternative doorways, but he's bowled over to find out they're all locked, which never takes place. While he tests the energy container, he confirms they're under lockdown and everything they do can be visible on the safety cameras, which might be nonetheless energetic. An argument on what to do ensues, but it's interrupted by using the unexpected sound of sirens. They leave through a window and note ambulances and police motors out of doors, most effective for the window to be blanketed. A voice pronounces that the group has been quarantined and they have to wait till assist comes. The passengers name their households to inform them what's occurring earlier than teaming up to yell at Jenny, seeing her because the representation of the airline selections. Jenny doesn't recognize how to shield herself, but thankfully Sheila interrupts the yelling to factor out she has a clinical kit in her bags that might assist Paula live to tell the tale some more hours. Jenny takes Ed and few passengers with her to look for Sheila's luggage, but at that second the electricity goes out. Ed courses them together with his flashlight, and while they go back to the aircraft, they discover Woolsey and Forrest are long past. Jenny opens the bathroom and is horrified to peer blood anywhere. Preston movements to get his computer and bumps into Kingston, who's sitting on his own. His spouse is gone, and whilst the others marvel what befell, Kingston makes use of his eyes to point at a pair of plastic cuffs at the ground which have been chewed through. Meanwhile, Ed cuts the carpet at the ground to attain a hatch that takes them directly to the baggage hold. Jenny reaches for Sheila's scientific package while Niall grabs a gun from his suitcase. Ed freaks out while a rodent walks via his feet and scares it away while saying it changed into a rat. However, Henry thinks it was simply one among his hamsters due to the fact he's located the damaged cage. As Jenny climbs out of the hold, she looks round and notices Preston's laptop protected with blood. On the quid of the hall, Woolsey is running on his fours, growling, and additionally protected in blood. All of a sudden, an inflamed Forrest seems in the back of Jenny and attacks her. The men without delay come out to assist, however punches do nothing, so Niall shoots him to demise as some of Forrest's blood falls on his face. Afterward, the organization runs off the aircraft, and in the gate hall, they locate Kingston thrown from his wheelchair and in subconscious Preston bitten on the again of the neck. Close by, Jenny finds Bev crying and begging for help, however she abruptly transforms and attacks as properly. Fortuitously, Jenny outruns her and the men push the door to fasten her out. The group goes return to the others, and Sheila does her quality to attend to Paula. Susan cleans the blood off Niall's face, yet they nonetheless percentage a kiss. Henry and Ed positioned furniture in the front of the door to preserve Bev out, and Jenny looks round, locating drops of blood at the ground and worrying approximately in which they got here from. Subsequently snapping, Jenny tells all and sundry to close up and takes over leadership because the captain is lifeless. Sheila explains this isn't any recognized ailment, and Jenny remembers the building on the news, which become also quarantined. Kingston notices a rat with very red eyes nearby, but he can barely hum, so he isn't heard. The rat falls on his head and manages to chunk him before George knocks it off. Even as the men seize the rat in a bucket, Sheila takes care of the wound. Then the group is of the same opinion to fasten George and Paula up in a crate in case they'll transform as properly. Then Ed makes use of a glove to grab the rat and notices there's a tag on its leg, meaning it escaped from a lab. George says Henry brought it and lied about the hamsters due to the fact he's sure he noticed lengthy tails within the cage in advance. When Henry denies it, Jenny takes him aside to call for the truth, and Henry swears he didn't, declaring lab rats wouldn't have surpassed the security take a look at. As they hug each different for consolation, suddenly Ralph comes out and jumps on Jenny whilst ignoring Henry's attempts to stop him. The others hear the screaming and rush to assist, combining their power to strangle Ralph with a hose. At that moment, Ed receives a message on the radio saying that the CDC is finally there. The group gathers at the door, however the 4 officers come in preference to permitting them to out. They hold the organization at gunpoint, even as taking the rat and Niall's weapon. Then they go to Paula and Kingston to provide them injections. The group needs a proof, but the officers handiest say it's protocol. The officials then demand the others to additionally agree to an injection. Anyone is hesitant, so Louise volunteers first, but before she can be injected, her cat bites her neck and runs away. Whilst an officer opens fireplace and misses every shot, Kingston eventually transforms and jumps on the man to chunk him. The other officers shoot Kingston down and try and take their partner away, handiest to find the door locked. They shoot at it to force it open and run outdoor, so Vorst uses the danger to follow them out. The police open fire as quickly as they see them and kill all of them except for one agent, whose simplest gets shot in the leg. The institution drags the surviving agent internal earlier than final the door. At that second, they hear the roars of the infected humans getting nearer in order that they run to hide interior a box. Susan stops whilst she notices Niall foaming on the mouth, so the others have to tug her in as they provide an explanation for he's infected as nicely. After closing the box, Sheila points out each injection had a special shade, so everybody become getting an exclusive aspect and now not simply protocol. Henry well known shows he picked up a gun and forces the officer to confess what he knows. It seems he isn't with the CDC, he's truly with the CBDT, or Chemical Organic Home Terrorism Organization, which fits beneath hometown protection. One of their devices went to that condo in LA some hours in the past, but no one got here out. Inside the attic, they observed a bioterror laboratory created by using a cult. They attempted to broaden a remedy based totally on a survivor, but it most effective made it worse, implying this institution was going to be the subsequent human trial. After confirming the rats carry the disease, the officer takes the gun from Henry and self-deletes. Nika has a breakdown even as Ed recalls this terminal often gets flooded because of an antique drainage tunnel, which means they may escape through it in the event that they discover it. All of a sudden, Woolsey seems on an opening on pinnacle of the container and grabs Ed's hand, so Henry attempts to shoot him simplest to discover he has no bullets. Ed tells George to push a button that lifts the box and crushes Woolsey towards a beam. Later on, the group leaves the box and Ed publications them through the place at the same time as Jenny notices Henry is missing. Nika walks on the return and something drags her far from the others, so the group accelerates the stairs to escape. In mystery, Henry is gaining access to a bag with every other gun. As the organization runs, Jenny trips and finds Paula, who has converted too. Jenny has to just accept her buddy is gone and makes use of a wrench to fight fight the creature till she pushes her off the platform, killing her. Then the organization makes it to an office in which they look for the terminal blueprints, which show them a way through a wall to discover the drainage tunnel. Meanwhile, George reveals he stole Henry's bag, and in her he finds suspicious files recording lab experiments, now not to mention a mysterious container. At that second, Susan and Niall locate them and try and attack, but Henry comes back and shoots them both simply in time. Ed notices that Henry became bitten, and George uses the danger to open the box, revealing a bunch of medication and a syringe. Henry finally admits he did convey the rats and explains he's part of the cult cited by the officer. Their aim is to clean the planet from human beings, who keep developing extra violent and adverse every day. Henry threatens to kill Jenny if George doesn't quit the antidote, so Ed jumps on him to prevent him, only to get shot lifeless. The others are actually scared and let Henry have the antidote, which he mixes with the blood from his wound and injects in his eye whilst explaining his organization has followers in various businesses, and that's how he were given the rats skip security. Now Henry is ready to leave and desires to deliver George as hostage. Jenny attempts to stop him, however Henry knocks her down and escapes with the kid and the blueprints. Jenny is extremely dizzy, so Sheila goes out first. Minutes later, Jenny comes out too and is discovered through an infected Preston. A chase ensues and Preston almost grabs her, so Jenny has to kick him off. Then she lures him into a device and bashes his head with a hatch lid till he's useless. Later on, she keeps to search for George and has to take an extraordinary course whilst she sees a transformed Nika standing nearby. Going into another room, she bumps into Sheila, who has retrieved the officer's thermal goggles. She places them on Jenny and reveals she's been bitten, so she asks Jenny to go after George whilst she buys her a while. Sheila is going lower back to the primary room and talks loudly to get the eye of the ultimate inflamed human beings, who without delay soar on her to kill her. Jenny reveals a hole within the wall that Henry opened to go after the tunnel, and while she's approximately to get in, she's grabbed by way of Louise. Using the wrench, she hits Louise until she knocks her down. Then Jenny walks via the section between partitions, noticing blood drops at the floorway to the goggles. She receives scared whilst she sees some animals, however they're just mice and now not the lab rats. Following the blood path, Jenny reveals the blueprints and Henry's shirt next to a ladder that goes into the drainage tunnel. She looks down and unearths George, who explains the antidote didn't paintings and Henry has converted too. Ignoring George's warnings, Jenny is going down and notices a few blood falling on her goggles. Suddenly, Henry appears and attacks her, making her drop the goggles before he starts throwing her around. Whilst Jenny attempts her exceptional to keep him again, George puts at the goggles and grabs the gun, shooting Henry down. Now loose, Jenny takes lower back the goggles and makes use of the wrench to finish Henry off with a blow to the pinnacle. At that second, huge flames sing down the hatch, which means the groups outside are burning down the terminal. The go-out is sadly blocked, but Jenny finds a luggage tunnel and kicks down the lid. George is just too scared to move down there, so Jenny gives him the goggles and lets him to head first for safety. As they pay attention, explosions going off outside, the duo moves as fast as they can, but Jenny soon starts off evolved, getting tired and realizes she's inflamed. George turns round and notices her puking, yet he refuses to depart without her. Jenny agrees to keep on following him just for his sake. Subsequently, they find the go-out, which is blocked through bars. George manages to without a doubt walk through them, and while he turns round again, a converted Jenny reaches through the bars to assault him. Luckily, she's too big to come through and George receives loose through taking off his jacket. Later on, George ultimately receives to break out from the airport. Meanwhile, Louise's cat escapes too and makes its manner to the metropolis. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.